Oh, here we go.
Da da
Bow.
da da dun da
Dun,
da
dun,
da
dun,
da
dun,
dun da da
dun, dun,
da.
dun, 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 dun. Orange and blue today, Sean Ponda. We gotta do the Beavis and Butthead, right? Like dun 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 dun. We are here for you today. Orange and blue today. That's right. You ever been in a mosh pit, Mace?
Um, I'm not sure if it qualifies as a mosh pit. This would have been about 22 years ago,
Okay.
Super Bowl week in Tampa.
Ooh.
Um, it it got pretty hairy. I've seen some stuff. I've
Okay.
experienced some things.
Brick killed a guy once.
Yeah,
That
had a
escalated
trident.
quickly.
Yeah, and I stabbed him.
All right, it is Orange and Blue. Today we are presented by Sean Ponda. It was a mosh pit of media activity today out at Centura Health Training Center.
You
Did I
got
get
it
it right?
right.
All right,
Congratulations.
CHTC. Boom. Centura Health Training Center.
Just drop the U from UCHTC to now it's CHTC.
CHTC. That is correct.
It's a
And
BFD.
it was another day where notebooks were filled, and I think is Sean Payton getting a little lax with us because he seemed happier today, Mace, and I appreciated that.
I think he maybe just liked what he saw at practice today, and certainly seemed to be in good spirits. Much longer press conference today than last week. Last week
Right.
it was very short and to the point. Today it was very effusive and expansive.
Yes, last week he was like Winston Wolfe. Right, I think fast, I talk fast, and you better act fast. Pretty pleased with sugar on it. Clean the blanket car. Anyway, it was good to hear him say so much. Mace, it was almost for me personally a little uncomfortable because I was like, he's almost, from a football standpoint, telling us too much, talking about the Joker, not about Nikola Jokic, but about the Joker within his offense and who it can be. It's not a wide receiver.
And not the
it's
smoker, not the midnight toker.
No, not that either.
Plays music on the run.
CHTC. I'll leave that one alone. But he's talked about the running back or tight end would be the Joker in this offense. And the Joker position has great ball skills and can move around the formation. And today, working on third downs, we saw Greg Dulcich have a great day.
We did. I mean, obviously, he had one. There was one that I mentioned. The question I asked Sean Payton about a deep catch downfield, but it wasn't all that he did today. And now, as Payton noted, it was a third down day.
Yes,
which lends itself to throwing the ball. Putting some strain on a defense in sub packages. Putting strain on offense and putting them in situations where they've got, where the pressure's on. But Dulcich, I thought, looked pretty good out there today. And I think the interesting thing was when Sean Payton talks about a Joker, sometimes the tight end, it's sometimes a running back. He did say it's not a receiver, but he mentioned Alvin Kamara, Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles as guys who've been jokers in his scheme.
Right.
They were obviously running backs. And he didn't want to make the comparison to some of the better tight ends that he's had, but he did name drop Jeremy Shockey, Jimmy Graham, and Jason Witten. Coach Shockey with the Giants and the Saints, Witten in Dallas, Jimmy Graham in New Orleans, of course, and said that he's not comparing Greg Dulcich to them, but that Dulcich has some traits that do have something in common with those players. Now it's a matter, I think, of what Dulcich can do with them. And of course, the other thing, the big question is whether he can stay healthy. That didn't come up today, but he's been healthy so far in OTAs. And I think really promising because remember at the owners' meetings in late March, when Sean Payton talked about Greg Dulcich, he really didn't say much about him, said they kind of got to get a look at him when they get him in. Well, now here we are 2 weeks into OTAs, and we're talking about pretty detailed and effusive praise for number 80. Clearly, Dulcich has made an impression on the most important person to make an impression on in the organization. That's Sean Payton.
Dulcich needs to do that, or else they'll just go to Adam Troutman. Now,
They'll find somebody else
about that, but
get another guy.
It was good to know it on a day that they were working on third down. So we'll talk about Russell Wilson, but it was Greg Dulcich, and I had to not necessarily combat fantasy people on Twitter, but I was just like, let's all pump our brakes here. We went from this staff either not knowing or not caring for what they've seen from Greg Dulcich to now one day of a really good practice. And to me, Mace, he didn't do anything that we already don't know he can do. You know, it's not like, wow, Dulcich was doing something I've never seen before. We know he's fast and athletic, and that's what he showed today.
Yeah. Now, the question is going to be the extent of his use, and some of that's going to be determined by what he is in the run game. Now, this is what Sean Payton did say in regards to that. He said, quote, I think his menu is going to be lengthy in the passing game, and there's enough stuff that we can do in the run game, unquote, regarding Greg Dulcich. That's a good sign as well, because by saying that, Payton is saying that there will be involvement for Greg Dulcich in the run game. So you're talking about a belief that he has some every down ability. And even Justin Simmons praised Greg Dulcich's work in the run game as well when he was asked about him about an hour and a half later after Sean Payton spoke. So all indications for Greg Dulcich today were exceptionally positive. If you're Greg Dulcich with your Weird Al curls walking away from Centura Health Training Center this afternoon, I think you're feeling pretty good about yourself and what your role is going to be in this offense.
I'm feeling pretty good about this coaching staff for figuring out what Dulcich can do. There's no pads, so it's not like he's out there just pummeling guys as a blocker.
It does play to his
figuring out what he
without
does,
pads, yeah.
And then doing that. I mean, it sounds revolutionary. It's not. But a lot of football is just like, hey, you can't do that real well, so let's not have you do that. But you can do this real well, so how about you just do that?
Yeah, and it's one of those things we talk about it with Albert Okwuegbunam as well. Can this new coaching staff play to Albert's strengths? But so far, it's Greg Dulcich who's kind of leapt off the page a little bit. Probably George Payton is feeling pretty good hearing that and seeing that from Sean Payton because, of course, Greg Dulcich is one of George Payton's guys.
Yes.
Drafted him last year.
Yes.
And when the Broncos traded for Adam Troutman back on draft day, it was fair to wonder, okay, what do they see in Greg Dulcich if they're seeing the need to trade for Adam Troutman? Perhaps it's one of those deals where we live in a different world now, to cite the movie Draft Day. We live in a different world now than we did on draft day. And we live in the world where the Broncos have now had 2 weeks of phase 3 of OTAs. And at the end of those 2 weeks, Greg Dulcich really made an impression.
He's trending up, that's for sure. And God bless America, Mace. There's another George Payton draft pick from last year that I wish I could talk about, but nobody asked Sean Payton about him. So we'll wait. But did you take notes on that guy? Because I did.
Are we talking about
he may or may not rush the passer? I don't know what I'm talking about.
He wore Ricky Bell's number. That's cross team reference.
Like
for me,
that.
Being from Tampa,
40, I even know that number.
42 is always Ricky Bell to me.
Okay.
The late Ricky Bell.
All right.
So yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So we'll talk about what was talked about, and a lot of that was Greg Dulcich.
Were you going to ask about 4-2, by the way?
I was going to ask, and there was too many wide receiver questions because I had a Sutton question dialed up. I was going to ask about 42, but I really wanted to ask about Sutton, even to Simmons, which I should have just jumped in. We're all kind of getting used to each other again, and we've got some amateurs in the Denver media that are jumping in at wrong times.
Not going to name any names.
Not going to name any names, but like I wanted to ask about Sutton looking more explosive. And they did talk about wide receiver. Sutton was brought up. Not necessarily the explosion, but that's where my brain was at when Sean Payton was going on and on.
Yeah. And also, I'll say this, and again, we're limited on what we can say, but when you get to training camp, if you come out to Centura Health Training Center and watch some practices, I would implore you as an observer to take note of where Sean Payton is on the field and who he's talking to. And that's something that I put in my notebook just to see, okay, he's speaking with this player. He's got some things he wants to emphasize to this position group. Sean Payton's very active. I mean, I thought to myself as I'm watching practice today, I wonder how many steps Sean Payton puts on during a practice because he's moving.
Yeah.
Like he's going all over the place. There's a lot of things that he wants to say, and he's really he's not micromanaging, but he is involved.
Yes.
With it.
Yes. And always teaching. And that's what I love about it. I can't speak to it. I wish I could, Mace, but there was a player that I'm not real high on that he walked down the sidelines with, giving him tips and pointers after a big play, by the way.
Someone you think they shouldn't have picked?
Somebody I think they shouldn't have picked last year that may or may not play wide receiver.
You've given away. Okay, now you're giving away too much.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right. And maybe I won't be all right.
What happened to Cecil? Too much there. Hey.
Well, I won't be out there next week, so it'll look like I got suspended.
Hey, don't say I wasn't warning you here.
You did warn me.
Yes.
You did warn me. You do a good job, Andrew Mason. I'm the one with the big mouth.
Oops, I just dropped my pencil.
Your pencil is scaring me today, by the way, because you're like shaking it around. You're rattling it like a saber.
I guess I'm channeling my inner Lee Corso and pencil pack Shermer.
Oh, yeah.
Although he had a traditional pencils, mine's more the mechanical type.
Yeah, at least you don't put it in your hat like Matt Patricia. Smartest guy in the room. Just ask him.
But not a good play caller, at least on the offensive side.
Yeah. But today was a day where Peyton tries to find his joker. Honestly, because he said it's a tight end or a running back. Again, with the complications. If I'm looking for a joker and it's tight end or running back, I will say I would give. I don't mind what I consider Javonte Williams to be as a receiver. I would like Jaleel McLaughlin to get more work. He's not getting the work that I thought he would. Whatever I have to say, but like I wouldn't write off Javonte as he can't catch. I think Javonte is a better receiver than people give him credit for. So your joker can be tight end or running back.
Let's be clear though, Javonte Williams has receiving skills. We saw them at North Carolina. If he had a flaw there, if you're looking at the downside of him as a receiver, is they dropped too many passes. His drop rate was too high.
Right.
But when he gets the ball in space, he can be effective. It was one of the reasons why the Broncos valued him so much, because he has blocking ability. He obviously can run between the tackles and brings the power, but he has pass catching ability as well. That was one of the reasons why he flourished in that Tar Heel offense with Sam Howell at the controls. So we know he's got it in him. Now, that being said, when you hear the descriptions of some of the other jokers, when Sean Payton is rattling off Darren Sproles, Alvin Kamara,
Reggie Bush,
thank you. I was just going back to the mental Rolodex. That's not who Javonte Williams is. He's not that type of back.
No. McLaughlin is, but we'll have to wait.
It's why I wanted the Broncos to take Tyjae Spears.
Oh God, it's perfect.
Because I thought he would have been a perfect fit for that type of role in this offense.
Yeah.
So
Tennessee, you got a real one. We'll see. Russell Wilson on third down. Orange and blue today. We're presented by Sean Honda. Russell Wilson on third down tells a lot. For me, Mace, it tells me get ready for some holding calls, everybody. Yeah, I think you should already have that assumed because Garrett Bowles holds and Mike McGlinchey, he holds more than Bowles. But today, and Sean Payton talked about it, on third downs, you're getting after the passer. And when they got after the passer, maybe some holding had to occur.
This is how much you get away with then, huh? Yeah. So the third downs, it was a challenge today, but I like getting into that situational work. It's a good place to start situational work. Now they're still relatively early in the installation of things because they spent those first few weeks focusing on running and lifting and not scheme install. So you're kind of working your way up, but I thought there were some positives out there today.
I thought there was as well. Again, with Russell Wilson, I know D-Mac was trying to say like, Russell had a bad day. I'm like, well, his offensive line still is gelling and coming together, and that's just going to take time.
Sean Payton didn't think Russell Wilson had a bad day.
Sean Payton didn't think that either. And I think Russ, working through those wide receivers that we've talked about, I think Russ did a better job under duress while also staying within play structure And again, I wish I could say more, Mace, but I don't agree with D-Mac on Russ having a bad day.
I don't either. But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't D-Mac make it out there a little later than
was it
many of us
Nuggets media
did?
availability? Is that right? He was Nuggets media.
Something was
right?
going on.
Yeah.
He's working a long night tonight because he's going to be out there at Ball Arena. He's going to have something at denversports.com post game, of course. But I did see him saunter into practice later than the rest of us. So take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
I'm not putting you down, D-Mac. I'm just saying you weren't there for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were.
And Russell Wilson did show better timing. I think probably that's the largest thing to watch out for, Mace, is like, what's his timing with the receivers? How is he sticking with the play? Is he exhausting all options as a passer before he takes off to run?
Yeah.
And these are things that I see. I'm generally pleased with what I see from Russell Wilson.
I am as well. I mean, the proof's going to be in the pudding when we get to the season. But I have been encouraged. And of course, we'll see certain players coming back from injuries, working their way into the lineup. And then I think that's going to help him out as well. But so far, I think he's looked pretty good. If he had done this last year, I think the reviews would have been far more positive.
Right.
Than what they were when we watched OTAs and then we watched training camp. And there was a lot of skepticism, like it, you remember on The Simpsons, Millhouse, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? I felt like last year in training camp, there was some unrest among observers as we were waiting for the Broncos to get to the fireworks factory. The only fireworks factory they got to was the one exploding in their face for most of the season as the offense completely imploded.
Yes. Merry Christmas, Broncos country. I will say this, Mason. I guess I just have to ask you. We haven't really talked about this, but I think it bears a conversation.
Yeah.
Do you think Russell Wilson's this wild horse? Because I don't. I think when he wanted to get away with some stuff, he did whatever he wanted with Nathaniel Hackett. It didn't work, people. And with Pete Carroll and the run heavy, like, okay, there were times, that's why Pete Carroll and him fell out of favor with each other. Mm-hmm. But I don't see Russell Wilson as this headstrong, I'm going to, whatever, Peyton, I'm going to do it my way. I see him as that good soldier of like, okay, coach, and tell him the why. And if it makes sense, and it's coming from Sean Payton, I don't see him as this, rebel rogue member of the Broncos offense.
Well, part of it is Sean Payton and his reputation, especially with another shorter than average starting quarterback, Drew Brees in New Orleans. And I think part of it is you're getting Russell Wilson at a low point, the worst season of his career. In his mind, you've got nowhere to go from but up. And I think what you're seeing in Russell Wilson and his willingness to adapt to what Sean Payton wants, some of that is because of Sean Payton's reputation, but I think some of it is also the juncture at which Russell Wilson finds himself, the fork in the road moment on the rest of his career. It's this season, right? Are you going to play and succeed deep into your 30s, continue to put up big seasons and have a Hall of Fame resume? Or is the Denver chapter going to be the biggest letdown since the Phantom Menace? Okay. That's what this is about. And a surprising amount of that is completely in Russell Wilson's hands. And I think he knows that. So when you've been humbled, you're in a position where you can say, teach me, show me what you know. I will listen to you. And you're not going to get headstrong and say, oh, it's my way. I think when you have a season like that, if you truly reflect on it, as Russell Wilson did, then you have a position of self-awareness, then I think you do say, okay, there are things that need to change. Help me do that. Help me help you.
Help me help you.
Sean, help me help you. That's maybe what Russ says to Sean, not in those words, but in effect, yes.
Well, not to go too meta on you, Mace, and I know you'll agree with me, but I think asking for help is a strength.
I do too.
And
admitting
I think,
you need help. They say it's
yes,
the first step, right?
yes. And Russell Wilson, one, he's smart. Two, he's a hard worker. Now, I don't need him to tell us how hard he's working. I don't need the high knees on the plane. Like, all that stuff's just bogus. But we know he will put in the work. Tell him what to do and he'll work on it.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. Tell him what to do, what to work on it.
Mhm.
It's not a matter of working on what you want to work on. It's working on what Sean Payton believes that you need to work on. You have to work smart, not work hard. Tim Tebow, when he goes to the New York Jets and he bulks up to 260 pounds, I remember, that shot of him running in the rain. He's 260 and people are going gaga. And I'm like, that guy worked hard, but he didn't work smart. And that ultimately helped doom his career. There were other factors as well, but that didn't help him, that he didn't work smart.
I've seen a lot Russell of Wilson's working smart without their shirts on, and any of them that are buff usually can't play. Curtis Painter was buff. Tim Tebow was buff. Like, the more I run through my head, you want a little dad bod when you're a quarterback. Peyton Manning had the dad bod. He's still got a little belly.
Yeah. Although Russell Wilson has kind of,
he's gotten a little
himself.
buff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll watch out for it. Jedi Techniques in the chat room. React to me says, any idea who they're freeing cap space for? I was talking to someone in the know who says tomorrow, if there is a day where a running back is acquired, tomorrow would be that day. I don't know. We'll see. And I'll tell you off air who it was.
Well,
it wasn't anybody with the team. I want to be that very clear. It was another reporter type.
Well, we'll see, right? There hasn't exactly been a flurry of moves here as we've turned the calendar from May 31 to June 1.
Yeah.
Part of it is because you can make those moves with a post-June 1 designation even in May. Like Brandon McManus has the post-June 1 designation, which means you're going to have some dead money on McManus next year.
Mm-hmm.
But you're just spreading out the hit and creating more room right now. And that's another thing. You could have cut McManus and had the Band-Aid of dead money all this year. They chose not to do that, spread out the hit so they have more money this year. And so I think that basically adds another 1.25 million of space to their salary cap by doing it with the post June 1 designation than without. And because of that, that tells me they've got someone in mind here as they get into June 1.
Yeah.
And as Gary Kubiak would say, we're fixing to find out.
We are fixing to find out. It is Orange and Blue today. We are presented by Sean Honda. And wow, we actually get to the third topic with more than 2 minutes left.
A very solid 6 minutes left.
Opposite Surtain. An interesting conversation for me. We talked to Patrick Surtain. I think it's funny Sean Payton calls him Patrick. I was like, who? Because he said Patrick, and I was thinking Patrick Smythe. I was like, what? Patrick? Oh, Pat. He's talking about Pat. Anyway, opposite of Surtain. Somebody's going to get a lot of attention. Now, Jaquil McMillan was brought up. I believe in the Simmons. Jaquan.
I asked about him. Yep.
Was brought up with Simmons. I like what I've seen. I don't think the exact plays, plural, were brought up, but I like what I've seen from McMillan. Mm-hmm. You and I both have a healthy appreciation for Damari Mathis, but somebody's going to get used to a lot of attention. However, Sean Payton did tell us how you could maybe cover that up a little.
He did. He did. You want to share the quote? You have it?
No.
Okay. All right. Because I haven't reviewed that part of the press conference. I've been focusing about other stuff the last couple of hours.
Sean Payton was talking about how you can zone it up. Like that's more of a problem in man-to-man. Mm-hmm. You can zone things up with these younger corners. But I like the fact that you're seeing confidence from both of these young players.
Now, of course, the thing is when you think of Vance Joseph, you don't think of zone.
No.
Think of man.
Aggressive.
And that's why I asked Justin Simmons today about where things are schematically. Is it more like what you guys were running back in 2017, 2018 when VJ was the head coach, or is it more what you did recently? And that's zone based with Vic Fangio and then Ejiro Evero. And Simmons deflected it nicely. He said that they're not really at the point in install where they've got kind of a grasp on what the overall scheme is. And that's fair. Again, they're an early point. But what it tells me is they're going to do what this defense does best. The fact that you're not coming in and saying, we're going to do this. You're finding out what the strengths and skill sets are, and then you're going to adapt accordingly. And that's good coaching. That's the way it should be. Whereas last year, I feel like it was very much offense and defense trying to say, well, this is what we're going to do, and you guys are going to fit that. I don't see that. And I think when Justin Simmons says that they don't really have a real good read on what they're doing schematically and tactically, that's at an early stage, what that tells me is schematically it's going to evolve based on the strengths of what the Broncos players do. So, guys like Damari Mathis, Jaquan McMillan, if they flourish in zone, I think you're going to see more zone looks than you've ever seen from a Vance Joseph coach team.
And that's fantastic because we think, or the fans will think, the egos on the field are one thing, the egos in the coaching staff are larger. And that's why you get the, well, this is my way, this is my scheme, the Pat Shurmurs, right? Like, this is what we're going to do because this is what I do. Like, no, do what your players do.
It's the one issue that I sometimes have with the Shanahan-McVay offense is that it is very scheme-oriented. Like, to me, the best job that Mike and Kyle Shanahan have done as coaches was the year that they remade their offense for Robert Griffin III in 2012 in Washington. And that showed a degree of intrepidity and flexibility in terms of scheme that was surprising and was relatively unexpected. And I think Kyle Shanahan has that gift to adapt. I don't know that that everybody who comes out from that tree has that same gift. I mean, I'll give you an example. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett had that gift when he came in last year. I don't think Rich Scangarello, when he came over from the 49ers working under Kyle Shanahan, I don't think he possessed that gift when he came here. And you mentioned Pat Shurmur, another guy who's got some West Coast influences on him. I don't think he has that gift. He worked a bunch of years for Andy Reid. Andy Reid has it. I don't think Pat Shurmur does.
Right.
But Sean Payton, I believe, does have that gift. And I think we're going to learn about Vance Joseph as well, but I think VJ is being empowered to focus his defense on what his players do the best. I think he's learning from being around Sean Payton as far as that. And I think that, and thus it makes it more difficult to project what the Broncos are going to do schematically on defense, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
And I think learning from those around you, as I just learned intrepidity, I have no idea what that is, but it sounds cool.
Intrepid, you know what that means, right?
Oh, yes. So that's what that is. Okay. I went to community college, dude.
Oh, stop it.
But look at where VJ's been.
Community college is still college.
It's still college. Look at where VJ's been. Look at how he's been able to maybe borrow from a lot of different people and different influences, different styles. And if you can adapt that and continue to grow as a coach, I think Vance Joseph will get another shot as a head coach someday, and it'll probably be better for it.
And you know what? I think that's another thing on the defensive side. You retain two coaches. Most importantly, I think in this discussion is retaining Christian Parker as the defensive backs coach. And CP is going to be able to really relay, okay, this is what these guys do best. And let's make it work coverage-wise to play to their skill sets. And I that excites me because I do feel like among the many failures of the Broncos in recent years has been trying to jam some square pegs into round holes, mostly on offense, but some of that on defense as well. I mean, I think back to 2019 and Vic Fangio asking Bradley Chubb to drop into coverage. Man, what are you doing? What the hell are you doing?
Right.
Should I have said that? Oh, well, I guess did.
That'll be all right.
Yeah, no, that's not his game. Adapt to what your players' gifts are. To me, that's coaching. It's why I have such respect for the all-time winningest coach in NFL history, Don Shula. Shula goes to 3 Super Bowls, winning 2 with a team that is ground and pound and then they had the no-name defense. You fast forward a decade, goes to another Super Bowl with a team that has, David Woodley at quarterback, making some use out of his mobility, and then an extreme pressure-based defense, the Killer Bees. And then 2 years later, they go back to the Super Bowl. That defense is fading. It's getting old. Bill Arnsparger had left for LSU by then, but then you have Dan Marino. You're throwing the ball all over the yard. So basically, Don Shula in Miami, goes to 5 Super Bowls with 3 completely different styles of teams.
Right.
That's coaching. That's adapting to what you have. Rather than saying, you're going to run it my way, it's I'm going to make my way fit what you guys can do best. And that gives us the best chance to win. And I think you're going to see that from Sean Payton and this entire staff this year.
And think about that Dan Marino offense, because it was a 5,000-yard record that stood for, 30 years?
Yeah.
5,000 was untouchable.
Set standards that lasted decades. I mean,
Yes.
that offense was 2 or 3 decades ahead of its time. And even today would be considered, maybe not revolutionary, but would be considered the best they could find. And we're talking about it being in 1984. But that was a product of Don Shula, had a very old school mindset as far as discipline and things like that. But looking at this collection of receivers and this rifle arm quarterback and saying everything needs to be tailored to making this work. I'm not going to try to ground and pound it. We're going to throw the ball all over the yard and you guys try to keep up. So, and I think that, and that's coaching to me, is adapting what you do. And to their credit and to the credit of the Bill Parcells tree, most of those coaches, including Sean Payton, have that sort of adaptability too. And then I think that's a reason why Bill Belichick has succeeded. I think it's a reason why Sean Payton succeeded. It's a reason why Bill Parcells succeeded. I mean, he was ground and pound when he was with the Giants, and then he gets Drew Bledsoe and he's throwing it all over the place. That's what you do. Let her rip. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's adapting to what you have. And that's good coaching.
To tie a bow on our conversation yesterday, old school doesn't mean ignorant. Because people will have a misconception like old school, he's set in his ways. Like, no. Old school does not mean ignorant or can't adapt or can't modernize your thinking.
It means a level, I think, of being demanding.
Mm-hmm. Discipline.
Demanding, discipline. There's got to be another D in there. Demanding, discipline, direct. That's another thing.
Darn tootin'.
Don't beat around the bush, right? Just get to the point.
That's how he is in his press conferences.
Yes, right. Well, sometimes he's very he loves expansive.
Talk. He loves to talk.
Yeah. I mean, we got, and I love it because, like, I was telling one of the other reporters today, I asked one question about Greg Dulcich, and I got answers to 4 questions. I appreciate that. That was expansive and effusive. I love that. And I feel like I learned something listening to Sean Payton. I get, when he is in that mindset, I feel like I'm getting a football education. Love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
He was staring into my eyes today.
What? I thought he was staring into my eyes. We were standing next to each other.
I saw him first.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is getting weird.
It's only weird if you make it weird. Orange or Blue Today, presented by Sean Ponda. He is Andrew Mason, and I am Cecil Lammey, and we talk about the Denver Broncos. Go Denver Nuggets.
Yep.
It's going to be a fun
Game one tonight, Ball Arena.
People predicting a blowout, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, first game, Miami getting used to altitude, whatever.
Here's the thing. Miami's getting used to the elevation, but Denver's going to probably have some rust tonight. And
start slow, finish hot.
Okay. I look at this like what you often see in college basketball and conference tournaments, because in conference tournaments, more and more you'll see the top seeds get like a round or two of a bye, right? And so they'll go up and they'll play their first conference tournament game, like in the quarterfinals, and they'll face a team that's played one game, maybe even 2 games heading into that. And what you often see is that team that's played a couple of games already, that's shaken off the rust, they play well early, maybe take a lead. Maybe it looks like it's going to be a surprising result. And then over time, fatigue kicks in for the team that's played a couple of games, and the fresher legs end up winning out. I think tonight may look a bit like that. I think the Nuggets are going to win, but it may be a little bit awkward there as they as they shake the rust off early in the first half. But I think the Nuggets will get it done and take a 1-0 lead. I don't think this series goes more than 5 games.
Nuggets in 5.
More talent. Mm-hmm. The thing that the Heat has,
size.
The thing that the Heat has going for it is experience at this level, having made the final in the bubble back in 2020. It is a slightly more battle-tested team over the last few years than the Denver Nuggets. And with all respect to Michael Malone, I think the Heat has the edge on the bench with Eric Spoelstra. I mean, Michael Malone's a good coach. Spoelstra's potentially an all-time coach. Okay. But I don't think that's enough to outweigh the significant talent advantage and skill advantage that the Nuggets possess, and how complete a team that the Nuggets are at both ends of the court, thanks to KCP and Aaron Gordon, really elevating the defensive game for the entire team, showing them how it's done. So I don't think it goes more than 5 games.
There you go.
There we go. Those are my thoughts on the NBA Finals.
That's pretty damn cool. So everyone have fun.
It's
OBT.
a big moment for Denver, for this town.
Yes.
Because if you've been around here for the decades, if you're real old school Denver and Colorado as a sports fan, then you remember the days when the only 2 teams were the Broncos and the Nuggets. I think if the Nuggets can win it all, this is going to have meaning that is only surpassed, I would argue, by the Broncos' first World Championship in the 1997 season. I think this will be right there, right behind it.
And maybe like that Broncos team, the Nuggets get more than one.
Hope so. We'll see.
Hello?
This is their window right now. Like, this is their moment. They got some breaks. Look, I mean, facing Miami in the final is a break. The fact that the Heat took out the Bucks in round 1, and Milwaukee was playing phenomenal basketball the last couple of months of the season. I didn't like the potential Milwaukee-Denver matchup. But the Heat took care of the Bucks, and then took care of the Celtics. And then, of course, you look around the West. The Lakers aren't deep. The Warriors are getting old. You have some teams like that are rising. I mean, I think you're starting to see some real big potential in the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they're not there yet.
They're like the Nuggets were, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, like this feels like the window. This is the time to strike gold right here. Let's do it. Starts tonight.
Let's do it. It is Orange and Blue today. OBT's BFD. He's Mace. I'm Cecil at Mace Denver at Cecil Lammey. Be safe, be kind. Know that you're appreciated. Stay tuned. And if you would, please, as always, stay frosty.